Hello and welcome to the West Yorkshire the West Yorkshire Football Show, looking at all things Bradford Park Avenue and non-league across our region. Delighted to say, as always, I'm joined by co-host Steve Browne.
Hello.
And our resident Avenue super fan, Lewis Sale. Thanks for joining us, Lewis.
Evening, guys.
We've got something a little bit different tonight. We're also joined by the Director of Football for Bradford Park Avenue, Martin Knight. Thanks very much for taking the time out of your evening to join us this evening, Martin.
No problem, and hello.
So, obviously, look, we know that it's been a difficult season on the pitch. Lewis, we've spoken to you over the course of the season from pre-season to where we are now. And it's been a difficult one. The side 9 points, I think, is adrift of safety as it stands. Lewis, obviously, will start as we usually would do with getting your take on Saturday's game and the game at home to Buxton.
What can I say again? It's another really disappointing defeat. I think, albeit, the first half, Buxton were a good side. You could tell they're unbeaten in 11, 12 games, plenty of confidence, very comfortable on the ball, very vocal between defence, midfield and forward. They were a decent team, being honest. They were one of the better teams to turn up at our place. They were probably a little bit disappointed not to probably have a larger lead at half-time as well. I think, we were probably shown a little bit of a lesson of how to play football on a pitch that we've got, especially with the personnel they've got. They've got the strength in depth. They've got a lot of quality across the pitch, and it's, I wouldn't be surprised if they're pushing for the playoffs. They've got a very good manager in Craig Elliott, been there, done it at Boston, previously at Ossett, and, in the former days as well. But, you got Boston into the playoffs, and you only have to look at what Boston have been doing this season to show what a very good manager he is at this level. I think second half we started well. In the second half, the first 10, 15 minutes were a little bit similar to what we did at Boston in the first half. We were on the front foot. We looked dangerous. It was almost like we'd been given a bit of a telling at half-time to kind of show really what you're about, because the first half wasn't really representative of that. And then we got the penalty. We could have, I was stood right next to it. How we didn't get a penalty 30 seconds before, when Theo Richardson's basically punched Will Longbottom in the back of the head and it's out for a corner. It's not a penalty, it's beyond me. And I think those kind of demonstrations and protests made it into a penalty from the resulting corner. But then it was just a disappointing way to finish the game, because you got yourself back into it. We'd lost Brad Doherty as well. The only recognised striker we had recently. He's gone off injured. We're playing Will Longbottom up front, who was exceptional, to be fair, in a role that's really unfamiliar to him. But I think Buxton's quality and strength in depth really told in the end. And 4-1 were probably a little bit flattering. But, at the same point, our confidence is near enough rock bottom. And you can really see that, if we concede 1 or 2 goals, then being 100% honest, we're not looking likely to get anything out of the game, which is telling. And it shows that in the league table at the moment.
Yeah, Martin, I kind of want to come to you on this, and obviously off the back of this defeat for the lads on Saturday, and just going with one of the early questions from Stephen Thompson, really, in terms of how do you feel as Director of Football that the men's team has been competitive this season, and then also to follow that up with how competitive do you think the side can be for the remainder of the season, given, especially as Lewis mentioned there, Brad Doherty's injury, the striker situation, in particular with Eddie Church obviously having left for the fee to Marsken, Jacob Blythe moving on loan to Darlington, leaving things very short up front.
There's 2 questions there, so I'll answer one at a time. So how competitive we've been this year, I think we felt going into the season we'd put a good squad together, more competitive than we were in previous seasons at the same stage. We sat down like we have in every year. We're realistic. Our first 11 is very, very strong, at least on paper. And I know football's not played on paper, but the first 11 was strong. But in terms of, and I don't want to talk about budget, because I know that the fans are going to, there's one of the questions that will be about budget and money. But the sad thing is football's governed by that. And we have to be, or have had to be over the last few years, very careful in our selection process. We've managed to put out a competitive first 11, but as Lewis said there, strength in depth. we struggle once we get past the first 11. So I think we looked at the start of the season like we were going to competitive. We built a very strong midfield and back line, which is what Mark and Danny and I had discussed. And we felt we added something different that we haven't had for a few years, which was a target man. But, you know, as the season went on, and certainly the start of the season, we didn't have a cutting edge. You know, and I think Lewis has watched way more of our football than I have. I watch it on video, so not live. So it's not quite the same thing. But we lacked a little bit of cutting edge, which we've had in the last season. You know, Brad got us 10 goals last year. Lewis got us 13 goals the year before that. The year before that, we had Jake. So we've always had a guy who's, going to get you 15, 20 goals. And we were lacking that. And we went out into the marketplace and we took Jordan Preston on loan. I think Lewis will tell you that our richest vein of form was whilst Jordan was fit. He added something that we didn't have before. He was clever. His movement between the lines. He's not big, he's not strong, he's not blisteringly quick, but he's very, at this level, an incredibly clever footballer. And we were winning games, you know, the odd goal here, the odd goal there, because of the extra challenges that he posed the other players. Unfortunately, you know, Jordan had a fairly significant hamstring tear, which has led to an operation. And that kind of left us a little bit short of a goal threat, if I'm being honest. And I think teams would roll up to us and go, if we get the first goal, there's a really good chance we're going to go on and win this, because we never looked like scoring 2, 3 or 4 goals as a team. I don't think we ever carried that threat. Eddie was, so then talking on to the second half of your other question, second half of the year, Eddie had 10 weeks to go on his contract. He wasn't playing, wasn't starting. You know, that was down to not lack of effort. The guy had huge energy. He ran his socks off when he came on. I think there was some, you know, Eddie's one of those that had never been in the academy system ever. And so some of his footballing decision making at what you would, at a higher level, so maybe not at the same, the fans see effort, right? What they see is a guy who's prepared to run his socks off, and there's no question that any of the team have managed not done that this year. But Eddie was a little bit sometimes making the wrong selection from a footballing point of view, from the feedback I was getting from Mark and Danny. So when a team came in and offered us some money for him, for a guy who's got 10 or 12 weeks left on his contract, you're always going to take it. You know, subsequently we sort of changed formation because Jacob definitely plays better as a 2. You know, he needs somebody playing alongside of him. That isn't Mark and Danny's preferred formation. They like a 4-3-3, as Lewis will tell you. That's been their formation for sort of 3, 4, 5 years. We changed to a 5-3-2 this year, or 3-5-2, whether you're attacking or defending, because Jacob needs somebody in and around him. He's not going to run the channels. He's going to win a lot of the balls in the air, looks to play people in. He's not a prolific goal scorer. And the reason that I say we, I'm going to use, that's not fair. That's not fair on Mark and Danny. The reason that I made the decision to move Jacob on is we got a loan fee for him. And Mark and Danny had already told me that they wanted to change formation to 4-3-3. And that would have meant that wouldn't have been Jacob. So he would have been on the bench. And that's an asset that we would have had sat on the bench, not playing, taking a top end of our salary structure. And we got an offer on the last day of the season, which wasn't just to take over his contract, but there was a loan fee involved. And at that point, there's a business decision to be made, not necessarily footballing. But I sat down with Mark, had the conversation with him. We agreed between the two of us that if that was the financial situation and he wasn't going to start the game, that would have been okay. Unfortunately, Brad then goes and gets an injury after 38 minutes, which is sod's law, right? So that's kind of where we are today. How do we think we're going to be competitive through the rest of this from now until the end? We got Lloyd coming back from his loan period, so Lafa's a little bit more up front. He's been doing well whilst he's been out on loan. And to be fair, you know, Will Longbottom's up there was our top scorer, carried a huge threat and did an incredibly good job when he played through the middle on Saturday, and has always given us 100%. And he's one of the lads we've got contracted for next year. So, look, if we can get our strongest 11 out on the field, we'll give anybody a game. Lewis hitting them. Football is a game of confidence, and right now we are not a team full of confidence, and that's a difficult situation. So I think we've got 7 games to save ourselves, or 6 games to save ourselves, and it's a difficult situation. Tough games. Everyone's a cup final, as the pun goes, but we're not down yet. But things have to go in our favour. We can't. Realistically, we're not winning every game we've got left, and some of the other results have to go in our favour. Is it going to be realistic to say we're going to sit here and say we'll get out of it? Probably not. But I think it's going to be tough for the rest of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of your reaction to that then, Lewis, what do you make of that and the fact that those 2 players went, and how do you feel about what Martin's had to answer about that?
I know we've spoken, well, I've spoken to Martin separately as well before this. I agree. I think Jordan being injured has been a big blow for us. Because he was the link-up play between a lot of what were good happening from the midfield to the likes of Jacob and Brad at the time. And I think actually, with great respect to Brad, I think probably Jordan and Jacob probably worked better together as a two than maybe what Jacob and Brad may have done already this season. I think for me, where the question was a few questions, but trying to condense it as much as I can, I think was Jacob played for me the best football in his time at Avenue when we had width, and we've never been able to get that width. And the only time I think that we've really done it, like I said earlier, is when he's had that kind of service delivered to him. And I remember, a couple of nights at Blythe, and also when we were at home to Burston, when he's getting crosses from Reese and Tom Angel as well, who's put the balls into him, because great respect, Jacob's not going to turn on a ball and run 30 yards and score a goal. He wants a ball on his head. Like Martin said, he's a target man. So for me, I think we've missed a gap by playing to Jacob's strength. If he's been at that top end of the West Yorkshire, that's disappointing to know that we've not probably played to his strengths a bit more. And I when Brad went down, it was one of those where everybody looked around and went, "That's typical." I think for me, and for a lot of people's real frustrations, is that I 100% get why for business reasons, but from a pure footballing perspective, for the rest of his season to possibly have what we've got to survive in this league, which, and Martin knows this, and I've said it on this podcast loads of times, for me it's a real big priority, because the difference between this level and the level below is vast. Is why we've not replaced them. We've seen, Josh Hines on Hull go back to Hull City after his month loan. We haven't replaced Eddie. We've not replaced Jacob. And Brad is probably more of a wingman, and Martin will know that from Lewis when he came on loan. Brad, when, to be fair, a good vein of form up front, got moved to the wing. Lewis came up front. So the biggest question, and I know that's a lot of people been asking this question, is, from a footballing perspective, I still find it baffling why we've got rid of a striker when we've got nothing left for the rest of the season and we've been struggling to score goals.
Is that a question? Sorry, do you want me to answer that question?
Go for it.
Yeah,
go for it. And I think that's been a bit of consensus in it from a few people, Mike. And I think you've noticed that if we're going to get rid of somebody, I've not known many football teams to get rid of possibly 2 strikers and not have anybody in hand to replace them.
Well, I think let's start with the Josh thing. I think we brought him in on loan. We told Hull we'd take him for a month because we know we needed some bodies, right? I mean, and look, with young kids, sometimes you've got. It's wrong to say he's a young kid; he's a young man, right? So that's my age. Sorry. So, but for a young man, it's you sometimes got to kiss a lot of frogs to find a prince. And so we do bring players in on loan. We have a look at them. Some of them take to the men's game quicker and easier than others physically. And Josh came in. We had a look at him. Mark said to me, honestly, showed some real flashes of a great play, which is why we started him at Telford. And at Telford, he was nowhere, right? He disappeared. But you do get that with young kids, and it's difficult to make a decision on a player within 4 weeks. But it's the reality of where we lived. We tried to get Josh back on deadline day. So when Jacob, when Darlington came in and said, look, we're interested, we were a bit like, well, we don't want to let him go because we're still in this. And, I can't discuss the financial situation, but their offer just kept getting better. And there is a point where you go, okay, I'm not that a super fan like Lewis, right? Bradford Park Avenue, let's be honest, they're not my team, right? I'm involved because my son used to play with them. And I know that's some of the questions that have been asked, you know, about my involvement and why I'm involved, and other bits and pieces you may or may not get time to come on to. And we try to get Josh back. We try to bring another midfielder in from Hull. We looked at a centre forward from Coventry. We try to get a deal done with a centre forward from Barnsley, all on deadline day. So it's not a lack of desire and it's not a lack of money. So let's be really clear. We didn't bring somebody in to replace Jacob because we couldn't get somebody done and across the line in time to get it done. And when a player's got 6 weeks left on his contract and the numbers that we were being talked about were significant, we can't turn that down. We're not in a financial... Listen, there are some footballing and financial realities that you have to go through. And as much as Lewis is saying it's the league down is massively different, let's be honest, financially it's not a financial difference for us from a business point of view. First of all, I can stream all of my games in the league below. I haven't got any restrictions. There's no BT contract. There's zero. It doesn't matter whether you finish 24th in our league, or first. The prize money is naught. There's zero prize money playing in the National League North. So the biggest challenge we're going to have next year, Lewis, and this is to all the fans out there, is not financial next year. There is going to be some budgetary changes, but they're not because of the league we're playing in. The biggest challenge is going to be recruitment. And that's my concern. That's the stuff when people say to me, what's the issue when we go down? And the conversation I've had with Gareth, if I'm being brutally honest with him, is, Gareth, recruitment's going to be a lot harder because you can pick players up in the Isaac Marriott's, the Lewis Knights, the Alex Hurst, you can pick up in National League North. It's much more difficult to pick them up in the league below because the second division and the first division don't scout lower than National League North. They only scout down there. So to go and pick up these lads that are getting released by academies is way more difficult. It's not a financial consideration. So going down is an issue over recruitment, not an issue over expenditure or cost. So, and we don't necessarily, especially because we lost York this year, right? We're not massively going to be our attendance is not massively impacted by going down a league. So it's going to be impacted, but not massively, not compared to the other revenue streams that we have within the business. So those are the reasons we made those decisions. Please don't think Mark and Danny were not working their nuts off. And I wasn't ringing, Sheffield United, Sheffield Wednesday. We even went as far as Coventry, Hull City on transfer deadline day, trying to get a replacement in for Jacob. Because I can assure you, we had the money. We had enough money to bring 2 players in on replacement, but we couldn't get anybody on loan from a younger player on loan. And to be perfectly frank and to be really honest, we've been looking for a striker for the last 3 months and nobody wants to release anybody that's of any quality. And there's no point bringing in a body just for the sake of bringing in a body. We've got to bring somebody who's going to improve the quality of the squad. And I can tell you it's not through lack of effort. Mark and Danny have been ringing all their contacts in the everybody they know. We've been looking at people. We've gone through a lot of names. We've got a lad now in the club who does scouting. So we've been throwing names at him. He goes and looks at it. We get scouting reports. We just haven't been able to bring anybody in who would improve the squad with the style of play we're looking for.
I guess the counter to that though would be, in this case, obviously you've tried what you've tried on deadline day and not be able to get the body in. Is no matter how good the money is in terms of that Darlow have offered to let Jacob go, if you know you're kind of struggling to find a replacement, why let your only main striker go, regardless of the figures? But if it could potentially goals be the difference between the National League North next season and the Northern Prem.
Well, let's look. I'm scored 6 goals.
Yeah, I appreciate it's not buckets loads. In a situation with a few strikers.
So he wasn't going to play. Listen to all of what I've said. He wasn't going to start, right? So we've not let a 20-goal a season striker go on deadline day, right? We've let a guy who scored 6 goals, has started nearly every game. Have we played the right type of football for Jacob? I agree with Lewis. I don't necessarily think we have, right? We haven't played with width, but we started the season with 3 up top, right? 2 wide and 1 through the middle, which is the way we played for. That is Mark and Danny's preferred formation, and it didn't work. Because we just were not getting the balls into the box because we were playing with inverted wingers, and he wants a guy to beat his man and put in a cross. right? But he's not prolific. He's never been prolific in his career. And if we've made a recruitment error, it was in pre-season, because we need a player. We're a team that's going to play with a lot of the time without a lot of the ball, right? You aren't going to have time to build up. When we get the ball, we tend to be hitting channels. And if we recruited the right player, now at the time, we sat down and said, like I said to you, we've got a strong midfield. We're going to have a lot more possession this year than we've had before. We'll be able to build from the back, get it out wide. We brought in Reece. We've got Lucas. You know, our left and right wing backs that we were going to play with had quality. But the game what we put on paper never transferred into the pitch. And we kind of were on the back foot. And then Jacob is not, you can't just, you know, Lewis, when we had Jake Beasley, right, who scored 20 odd goals and he's done fantastic. How many times did, you know, Nicky Clee or Killer or Brano, sorry, you might know all these players, guys, but maybe you do, just get a ball and, you know, we still had Luca and hit a channel. It looked like an aimless ball, right? But when you've got a player like Jake Beasley, or then we had Lewis, and then we've got other who would just run what would look like an aimless ball, chase it down and turn it into a throw-in in the other opponent's half. That's not Jacob's game. He's got lots of footballing attributes, right? But that's not one of them. And when you're playing with a lot of the game without the ball, and you're going to put in, look, we're not Manchester City, right? So there are going to be times where you're putting through your laces through the back of the ball, hitting a channel and going, look, there's a load of green grass there. Go and press the ball. In the past, we've had players that were more suited to that type of situation, and that's not Jacob's game. So did we recruit the right player season last year? We did, because we convinced ourselves we were going to have a lot more possession. The reality is we didn't, and therefore Jacob was not the right type of player for that type of football that we ended up having to play.
So a quick one just before we move on, because I know we've been like 20 minutes already and there's probably a lot of other questions. Very quickly then, Martin, do you think we're better off in this situation with Jacob gone or not?
Financially or football?
Both.
Well, financially, clearly we are.
Football?
Okay, in my opinion, yes. We're not worse off. I don't think we're better off, because obviously now Brad's got injured, different question. But when I made the transfer, and that was my decision, so we're really clear, that's not Mark and Danny's decision, right? I had a discussion with them about the football, but every transfer that happens in the club ultimately sits on my desk. That's my decision, not theirs. So don't give them any, I don't want to use the word, I don't want to swear on radio, right? So don't give them a hard time over that decision, because ultimately the financial aspect of the first team is 100% my responsibility. So I had a discussion with Mark on the phone and said, look, if we go, what does that leave us with? We can still got points to play for. We discussed that he wasn't going to start that weekend. We wanted to go back to a 4-3-3. We don't feel that in a 4-3-3, that's Jacob is the strongest option of what we had fit and available at the time. Brad's got injured, so are we in a worse situation? Look, Lewis, it's not funny, but look, that's sod's law. 38 minutes in, he's getting, Brad gets injured, or 28 minutes in. It's unfortunate. Would you have liked to bring Jacob on? You would. However, Will had an amazing game, so we're not as strong, but I think we're not as strong defensively, because also Jacob was one of our markers from set pieces. So I think that's a bigger loss than his goal threat, is my honest opinion.
We got a message from Ryan Burston. He said, would you say your time at Avenue has been successful? And how do you reflect on your time at Avenue?
From a footballing point of view, if we go down, it can't possibly be reflecting on us being successful. I don't care you can put any measure you want in the world. If we get relegated this year, then from a footballing point of view, I failed. Not anybody else. That's me. That's on me. I work in conjunction with Mark and Danny, but ultimately that's my responsibility if you're in my position. However, if you look at another metric, are we in a much better financial position than when I started? Yes. So that's not the measure of success that the fans want to hear. But as much as I am accountable to the fans, I'm accountable to Gareth. And, we Have we kept within our budget? Yes. Did we, for the first 2 years, have the lowest playing budget in the whole of the National League, all 96 club? Yes. Did we survive? Yes. Did the first year, because these are some of the questions I know that I've read, right? Were we incredibly lucky because of COVID in the first year? Massively lucky, right? I take no credit for that. There was no skill involved. We got lucky. But, you know, these things happen in life. I think we've got probably two of the most talented managers partnership in the league. They've been working with a really, really small budget. I've been very, very strict with them on that budget. And I can talk about how we spend that money if you want, if the fans are interested in that. But from a footballing point of view, if we go down this year, it's been a failure. Financially, is the club in a better position than it was when I joined? Massively. And I'm not really, to be fair, there was another question. How am I qualified to be a director of football? It's a job title, guys. I'm a chief commercial officer. I've got no qualifications other than my son plays professional football. I've watched a lot of football since he was 6 years old. I'm a fairly astute learner and understand bits and pieces. But from a commercial point of view, I wrote to Gareth. I said, yeah, it looks like 2 add 2 makes 6.5. This is what I think a 5-year plan looks like. And that gets the club to be self-sustaining. Look, let's be honest, guys. We've got a 72-year-old owner who knows how long he's going to last. Gareth wants the club to be self-sustaining, so he can't keep chucking the money in because he hasn't got the financial wherewithal to keep going. And I don't know that many people who are in a position to spend £350,000 a year. And that's not to be competitive, guys. That's to be mid-table. If you want to be competitive, the number is going to be bigger. And there is no exit strategy. That money is gone. You're never going to get it back. And I'm not talking about 1 year. I'm talking about ever. And there's not that many of them about. If there were, right, I've spoken to Gareth. Gareth would walk away, not happily, but would be prepared to walk away for free from all of the money that he's put into the club today if there was another investor who would come in and could show that they could support the club in a competitive position for the next 5 years. And if anybody out there, and we can't find them, but if you know somebody who's prepared to throw away £500,000 a year for the next 5 years, that's £2.5 million after tax, with absolutely no chance of getting that money back, none, zero, then tell them to give me a call, because that's the reality of the life.
Just some other areas just to cover. John Labani got in touch. He said, we get regular academy, ladies, comedy nights, music nights, information from the official channels, but very little first team news until 2 p.m. Saturday. Will this be improved upon? And generally across the board, will communications to fans be improved upon?
I think John makes a good point. There should be. You know, something that we have got a guy in who you know, are with to help Callum. You know, got to remember that we haven't got a lot of full-time staff. I'm not full-time, guys, right? So let's be clear. This is an unpaid role. I get no money. In fact, I've invested money in the club in the last 2 years. So it's cost me money to do what I'm doing. Callum works for us full-time, but he now has a much bigger job. His job is to manage the ground, manage the lettings, manage all the commercial aspects. Last time I checked his contract on, he says he works 40 hours a week. I know Lewis used to help us out with the social media, Lewis, as you did, and that was, you know, thank you very much for that. But it's not an easy thing. It's not because we don't want to communicate. It's just time. I've got a full-time job, you know, that pays me, that, you know, pays my bills and all that kind of stuff, so I can live and eat and all that, same as anybody else. And we have a guy that does it. They've got 5 full-time staff in the academy, and we've got 1 full-time member of staff in the football team. Who, other than, and well, one, Callum, and everybody else is part-time. Danny and Mark have both got full-time jobs. I've got a full-time job. The players have got full-time jobs. So it's not through lack of desire. It's through a lack of time. And if there are anybody out there, and I'll do this on an open forum, is anybody out there who would be interested in helping us with our social media content and doing a little bit of work voluntarily for us, please give us a call, because we would be more than happy to have you. So we would like to improve it. It's just a case of man hours, if I'm being brutally honest.
Alabang 100 says, supporters believe the club's owner has no ambition. Can you say with any confidence that we will be competitive next season? Are we even going to try to climb the pyramid, or are we destined to plummet?
That's okay. Does Gareth have ambition? Of course he does. But the first thing he wants to do is he wants the club to be self-sustaining, because he's 72 years. I'm going to go say, I'll say it again, right? He's 72 years old. If he dropped dead tomorrow, right, and he stops putting money into the club every month, there won't be a club, right? I can make that. You can listen to that. You can hear it. You maybe not hear it. I can't make it any more blunt than that. Without his money and his investment every year, with absolutely no chance of getting his money back, and it's on a month-by-month basis, the club ceases to exist. So the first thing he wants to do is to protect the club. And then it becomes an investment opportunity, right? So we can go to people and say, right, we've got balanced books. Let's talk about some real numbers. When I wrote to Gareth, our turnover, right? Just our turnover, our entire income, every penny that came into the club was 207,000 quid. Right? Just want you to think about that number, because a big number, 207,000 quid. The average first team salary budget last year in the National League North was 347,000. Right. So income of 207, average was 347. Right. We just need to be acknowledging the numbers that we're talking about here. Now, out of the 207, we had to pay a first team budget. We've got to pay referees. We've got to pay the police. We've got to pay for St. John's Ambulance. We've got to pay for stewards. We've got to turn the lights on. Right. I mean, I can keep going before we pay a single player, before we play a manager. This is a economic discussion. That's when I said to you, look, I have a job title. It's a job title, Director of Football. I'm really the Chief Commercial Officer, right? So in any other business, that's what my job title was. Like I said to you, I don't have qualifications in scouting. I don't have a FA qualification. Oh, I've got FA level 1 football coaching, because I used to coach Lewis when he was 6 years old. What I understand is business, and I understand that 2 add 2 makes 4. And I understand if you're going to spend 500,000 or 350,000 just to be average in the wage bill, you can't have an income of 205 or 207. Right? You can't, guys. It's not sustainable. So yeah, you can and I'm going to be very vociferous on this, right? You can criticize Gareth all you want. Does the guy want the best for Bradford Park Avenue? Yes, but he's 72. When he dies, what happens? Because he's not going to live forever. And there are just not that many sugar daddies out there who are prepared to throw £350,000 a year. Whether I saw one comment, oh, it's a tax write-off. Grow up. I'm sorry. I said I would be real and authentic when I came. Grow up. That's not a tax write-off. That's insanity. No one's going to give 350,000 quid to a business with absolutely no chance of getting it back. It's not a charity, so it's not a tax write-off. And to write off £350,000 a year as tax, your income has to be in excess of 10 million, or your EBITDA needs to be in excess of 10 million to get any kind of advantage of that. Right? So understand what you're saying before you start writing silly comments. So does Gareth want the best for the club? Yes. Is he ambitious? Yes. But first and foremost, he wants it to be a club that's in existence. Let's start with that. Now, the other question is, will we become next year? Sorry, because you asked I don't know, because I don't know what the average wage bill is in the league below. But if I look at a club like South Shields that took Dylan from us, right? I'm not going to tell you the numbers because I can't, because of GDPR. But he's gone. He left us. He'd signed for us. I had him under contract for this year. He would have been mid to top level in our wage structure. He went to them. They're full time and they're paying him 3 times. 3 times. Lewis, I don't know what you get paid, and I don't want you to tell me on the radio. But if somebody came along to you and said, "Lewis, I'll pay you to do exactly the same job, but I'll give you 3 times the money," right? You'd go. So imagine what their budget's like, and they're the league below.
Yeah, I get that. I think South Shields are a completely different case in point. I think in that league, I think they are standing out amongst a lot of other people. So I agree. I think people are going to move probably a little bit for that money, and they're also full time. So I think we've got to, in fairness, probably looking at it from also a football perspective. Weirdly enough, I probably might be better off playing for South Shields because of full time, and it would have been a near miracle if he hadn't gone up. I think for me, and I'm not, and I think this is the thing, Martin, that a lot of us say on the terraces in between. I don't think there's any there's any question that people are 100% grateful and really appreciate what Gareth and the rest of the guys have done to put money in, and that goes without question. 100% goes without question. For me, it's what are we doing to go out and get that extra investment? Because we know that we got told this about 5-6 years ago. This was pre-COVID, that we were looking for investment. Nothing's changed. We're now in a situation where it's not looking good because of the points that you've raised. And footballing wise, we've gone backwards in that time as well. We've not from I hate to say this, Chris, from that 5-1 win at Guiseley in 2018. In that past
I'll let you off.
5 years,
I'll let you off.
that 4 or 5 years is got worse. And I think for me, it's what are we doing as a club to go out and make investment? Because I don't see enough from the club itself to go out and ask for that investment, whether that's social media, whether that's on the website, whether that's in the press, whatever that looks like, and a prospectus is being put out to investors. And I think this is where fans are really frustrated, because they know that there's going to be an end point at some time, but it's all about future planning to make sure that, I know you use the word sustainable. I don't like the word sustainable because I don't know being in football is being sustainable. I think it's managing the money in the club of what you can afford to do rather than being actually self-sustainable. But I want to kind of understand, and I think a few others do, is what is being doing, what is happening within the club to push that investment for people to come in and look at that.
Well, you talked about two. So look, I run big businesses, right? And I've taken businesses through IPOs, so that's initial public offerings for those who don't know, and PEs, which is private equity deals. And a prospectus, as you called it, is basically a sell book, right? So you put together, this is what we've got, this is what our assets are, this is what our future looks like, this is what our future revenue looks like, these are the opportunities that we're going to get, this is the investment that you're going to make, and at this point you'll get your money back. And we can put together the sell sheet, right? That's not a problem. The issue is, at this point, you'll get your money back doesn't exist in football. It doesn't, Lewis. That's the reality.
Oh, I'm not disputing that, but there's not been enough from the club to show what we're doing about getting an extra investment for me.
So the first thing that we're trying, so part of Gareth's plan, right, and it's Gareth's plan, if we are self-sustaining, we are much more attractive. Because then, this is going to sound really not wrong, but I don't want it to sound wrong. If the club is self-sustaining and Gareth steps away or dies or what, look, he wins the lottery. I don't forget because he's already won the lottery, but you know what I mean? He's no longer involved in the club. The club survives. It still exists, Lewis, right? You can still turn up every week and it pays it for itself. If somebody then buys the club or takes over the club, like I said, Gareth's not looking for his money back. So you don't have to buy it. You're just going to have it. You can give it, here you go. You can have it. It's £1. But you've got to demonstrate that you can afford to sustain it. Right now, that's a big chunk of money. But if it's zero, then instead of going, you need to find every single year 350,000 quid, and we're much lower than that number now, right? We're still 6 figures, but we're way lower than that now, 100 grand a year, right? It's still, you've got to find that money in order to succeed. Very, very different from saying to an investor, look, it breaks even. Now, if you want to, in any given year, because you've had a good year, chuck in a bit of extra money and see if you can push for a playoff, a pick, a promotion, that kind of stuff, then it becomes more attractive, right? It becomes less of an albatross and more of a plaything. And I don't want to use I'm not using those words in frivolously, right? But it's not like buying a Premier League club, right? Or a Championship club that you can get in the Premier League and the numbers are astronomical, right? Because I know Dean Hoyle very, very well, right? So I know Dean and he did very, very well when the club went up. And I know they're in trouble right now. But there are a lot of clubs out there. You get yourself to break even, you suddenly become much more viable from an investment point of view. Trust me, these high net worth individuals, unless they are Bradford Park Avenue fans, Lewis, and I mean a fan, you know who they are. So we're now looking for a businessman, somebody who wants something that's I know he's a word status symbol or a toy, but they're not going to be a Bradford Park Avenue fan because we haven't got that. If there was a Bradford Park Avenue billionaire out there, we'd know who they were, but they don't exist. So you're looking for somebody else.
Matt,
so
and I get it.
You've got to make it attractive for them, right?
100% I get it. 100% get it. But it's still not answer my question is, what are the club doing to seek extra investment or somebody to come in and take that club if they feel it's the right thing to do? It's not. I get the whole business. I get that whole rationale behind it. But for me, still, it's not answered the question is, what are the club doing and showing to people of going out there publicly, externally to people to say, we want investment.
So listen, so I understand what you're saying. We could go and show the business to people today, and you won't get an investment, Lewis. If we get to break even, then we can go and show the business to people.
It's an assumption. That's an assumption, though. I get what you're saying in terms of numbers, but it's an assumption. So there's not much being done by the club to get extra investment at the moment because of the numbers. Is that what we're saying?
Okay, we can go out to the Bradford people. We got to find somebody. If there was a Bradford Park Avenue fan right now who had that kind of disposable income, let's be honest, to throw it away, we would know who they were because we only get 110. They'd be a season ticket holder, Bradford. Right, Lewis. We'd know them. They don't exist. So it's a non-Bradford Park Avenue fan. We are not an attractive proposition for a non-Bradford Park Avenue fan until we get to a position where we're close to break even, and we're not close to break even right now. We can go and listen. The honest answer to your question is what we're doing right now. We're not pushing it, Lewis, and we're not pushing it right now because I've done private equity deals and initial public offering deals, and we are not a viable proposition for an investor today.
So we're happy to carry on the way things are going then?
No, I didn't. No, that's no.
I'm not assuming what you said. I'm asking a question. So we're content with how things are because at the moment it isn't working, is it? As a club, like you've explained yourself, and the club from the situation. What's happening now, both potentially more so on the pitch, and as well as some of the issues off the pitch. Is it working as it should do? No,
it's not, Lewis.
So we're happy to carry on with the way that we're going.
No, we want to keep changing things, but we need to keep what can we change and what's inside it. So we can change, like maximizing our revenue. So we're renegotiating some of our contracts with the academy. We are reviewing how we provide our education with the academy in order to increase our revenue and to increase our share of the academic contribution that you get per player. So we're reviewing how do we look. It's very simple. If I said to you earn 30 grand a year, forget it. I don't want you to know your numbers. If you earn 30 grand a year, right, and your net income's 25, you spend in a year 25, right? We want to get to that point. Now we can do that in one of two ways. We can cut costs until we get to 25 expenditure, or we can increase our income from 25, and that gives us more headroom. So we're currently doing both things. So we've made a review of our staffing so that we're optimizing our staffing, and we're going to make a review of our, again in summer going on right now, there's a review of our roles and responsibilities for those people who take an income from the business. And we're also reviewing all of our contracts with our suppliers, with Bradford Bulls, with Bradford College, with Manchester United. We have a lot of big clubs and people and organisations that use our facilities and who we partner with, and we are reviewing all of those. We are trying to do more things through the hospitality suite, through the bar, all of those bits and pieces. But Lewis, there's no magic one. Those things don't change overnight. No corporation thinks they can change those things overnight. We have to deliver a 5-star solution with a 5-star experience, and we can grow our income. Because if we don't grow our income, we cannot increase our costs. And in order to give you what you want, and what I know every Bradford Park Avenue fan want is, and I've read your blogs, right, and you know that, you want hope. Listen, I've been a Newcastle fan for my entire life, and up until 2 years ago, there was bugger all hope, right? When Fat Boy Ashley was owning the club, and he was running it as a business, and we didn't have a super state with questionable human rights chucking money into the club. I had no hope, right? I used to go, oh, listen, especially when we had the caretaker manager, the school teacher manager in charge, Steve Bruce. I had a big issue because he would forego the cup, he would forgo any cup. We got to a final this year because we were safe in the league. So I understand the hope, and Gareth, me, everybody involved in the club wants to give fans so that at the start of the season they have some hope. And it's challenging because economically, in order to give you that, it's not financially viable right now, because when we look at our income, when we look at our costs, those two things do not measure up.
kind of comes across then that it's going to be a struggle to maintain what you would class as, the higher regions of non-league football, whilst obviously it being the financial kind of pit that football is at this level.
I think there's a bigger discussion, guys, and it's not about Bradford Park Avenue, right? I think a wider discussion in football. When I look at other clubs in our league, some of them in Derbyshire who are not too far away from us, who have smaller crowds than us, who I know have got astronomical wage bills compared to us. How is that being funded, right? Where's the income coming from? Look at the league. Look, South Shields do not have the fan base and the crowds to support the kind of wage bill that they've got. They've just got a guy who's retired, sold out for. And look, we're not talking about a guy who's a millionaire. That's not enough. You need a guy who's 100 millionaire or a 200 millionaire to be able to fund this kind of stuff and do it when you haven't got the base. You look at the guys the lads at Wrexham, the two guys from Hollywood. They sent a bloke over. They basically did Moneyball and knew that Wrexham, and don't forget, they're still chucking in $1 million or $2 million a year of their own money to get them to where they are, but they're getting 10,000 fans a week. And it's not just the 10,000 fans on the gate, it's 10,000 fans buying a pint of beer and a pie and a raffle ticket and their fan. We have this fantastic group of fans. We've got the development fund. We punch above our numbers in terms of what we contribute massively, and that should not be underestimated. But 100 people can never generate as much as 10,000 people. It's not possible. So they picked that club because it's a one club town. We're not. We've got a massive monster in our town who priced their season tickets at ridiculous. Listen, Guiseley get 220 quid for a season ticket. We can't charge more than 150 because Bradford is charging 165 or 170. Bradford City, right? So there are a set of very unusual circumstances that people may or may not want to hear, but they're the realities of our business, where we are geographically. So those are the challenges that we've got. But look, every football fan, which is coming back to what Lewis said, is should we be happy with what we've got? Absolutely not. Have I done a good job? Absolutely not. If I get us relegated, that's not what Gareth asked me to do. So, he wanted to stay in this league. Let's be sure his ambition was to stay in this league. However, the first thing was Martin break even. So that's the first thing that's my KPI, right? I need to get the club self-sustaining. So, Lewis, we can go and put it into a sell book and find an investor, because at break even, we're very, very attractive. At a massive loss, you're not attractive. That's the reality. And that's meant that we've had to go and beg, steal and borrow, ask Mark and Danny to perform miracles with 17-man squad, loan players. And listen, there's going to be lots of questions about, is he a negative manager? Is he that? Does he play this way and all that kind of stuff? You've got to understand the circumstances he's found himself in, which is that's not the squad he would have picked, right? The squad he would have picked, Lewis, and I was at Guiseley when we beat them 5-1, right? And we absolutely took them to bits. I was there that Boxing Day. Lewis had a good game. Alex Hurst had the best game he ever in the Bradford Park Avenue. Jake was unplayable. We absolutely took you, but it was like men against boys. But that team to put on the pitch cost 3 times what we put on the pitch last year. 3 times the cost.
Sorry, I thought Chris was coming in. So what is next then, Martin? What happens next? How close is the club to being self-sustainable, and how quickly can it reach that goal and then hopefully turn it around and start to progress upwards, do you think?
I think probably another 12 to 18 months. I think we'll be reasonably... Look, if we go down, I think we'll be reasonably competitive. I think if we... like I said to you, is going to be recruitment at the lower level, right? You're going to be... Some players are going to disappear. Jordan Preston, for example, we got for less money than Spennymoor were offered from a club laying below us, and Jordan wouldn't go and play in that league, right? So there's a reality that league is going to be a different type of player. We're probably going to have to recruit a different type of player, and we're going to have to play a different type of football. I think that's the reality. Will be competitive from a budget point of view. Will we be spending as much money as Guiseley? No, but they get 1,000 fans and we get 400. So look, there's that reality, right? Regardless of whether you put money in. However, Thomas and Callum, look, our shirt sponsorship is worth, and short sponsorship, we're getting 4 times as much as we were 3 years ago. So they're doing a fantastic job. We've got 80 kids in the academy. So our turnover, which was 207,000, is now close to 500,000. Now, we're not making a profit of that, but we've more than doubled our turnover in the last 2.5 years. So have I been successful? On the one hand, yes, not on the first team, because we're still managing with one hand time behind back. How long do I think it's still got to go? 12 to 18 months.
No, thank you for answering. Lewis, when you hear what Martin's had to say and paints quite a stark picture of, you know, the brutal reality of what it's like running a club in Park Avenue situation, how do you feel hearing that, and what do you think the other fans will think hearing that?
It doesn't surprise me because we've heard some of the stuff before, which is to be expected. I think what's really hurting us as fans at the moment is what I said last week, is that there seems to be no kind of real ambition for the first team and hope at the moment. And I think that's what's really hurting us at the moment. There's a real discontent on the terraces at the moment, and I think that's where the club need to do a lot more. And I've spoken this separate with Martin as well, but you know, there's people, for instance, I was speaking to one gentleman who's been to Avenue for 40, 50 years. He's been there even when the club kind of died. You know, he's stood on the terraces at Alton Park Avenue, and he bleeds green and white, red, amber, and black, whichever decade you want to talk about. And he's talking about not coming back next year. And I think that's a real indication of where there's a big split at the moment between, I think, where the club is and where the fans are. I've said it countless times that I think the club have failed, if I'm being honest, in really communicating and engaging with the fan base a lot, because some of the decisions people might not like, and obviously might not like what Martin said, but if you put a really comprehensive plan and action plan together to engage people, you might get a pass once in a while. People might not like it, but at least they feel a bit loved, a bit appreciated, you know, a bit of an arm around them. And because of where it is at the moment, it's got to this position where it feels quite drastic, to the point where people who are, again, hardcore supporters who've travelled home and away are now saying they'd actually take 2 or 3 relegations if it meant that potentially Gareth and Martin left, being brutally honest. And that's where some fans, hardcore fans, are saying it. And I think that, again, a massive indicator is that we're going to away games, not on a Tuesday night, but on a Saturday. And there's, I'd say, 5 supporters on the bus. And I don't, you know, we're talking about making the club sustainable, you know, getting people on board with the club and making it attractive. But when you're losing the hardcore people who go in, week out, who spend the money on the season tickets, who spend money in the bar, they'll buy a pint and a burger, and they'll buy the programmes, and they might buy the odd bit of merchandise here and there. And when they're starting to possibly think about not coming back, for me, there's a real red flag there for me. And I think, you know, that it can be saved from that perspective, but it's something that needs to be done really quickly. So in answer to your question, it's disheartening, doesn't surprise me. The worry is that not only do we go down this season, because that is looking very likely at the moment, is what does next year look like on the pitch. I understand the money situation, but I go and watch a lot of games in that league, as you guys know. And a lot of our young lads, with the greatest respect for them, are talented kids and will do well in the future. But that NPL is one of the toughest divisions you'll play in, and they will really struggle in that division. You look at the teams in that league, look at South Shields, you look at Radcliffe, you look at likes of Gainsborough and Hyde. They've recruited really good, experienced ex-professionals who may be coming potentially towards the end of their career, but who've been there, done it, and they know exactly how to win a game and grind them results out. And for me, when you look at the squad that we've got this season, I say this season, probably now at the moment, we would probably be towards the lower end of that NPL unless we get some really good experienced professional into that building. And unfortunately, probably them players might not come cheap. But the worry is that we go down next season, and then you are starting to kind of get into a little bit of a worry, because from what has been done in the past, and a lot of great work has been done to get us to a magnificent point from people who started the Old Sunday League Club to where we are now. It feels like we've gone backwards in recent years, and it could have been avoidable.
How was it avoidable, Lewis? Explain that to me. Explain the maths to me. Explain the business maths where 200,000 turnover supports the £350,000 expense on the first team, not profit, turnover.
So I'll throw it back. You've just said that
where's it avoidable? And this is the reality check is you say stuff like that. Okay, just so everybody's clear on this phone call, right? I do not take a brass bean out of the company. In fact, at the club, right? In fact, in the last 2 years, I've invested over £10,000 of my own money. Those Hoover sponsorship boards, although I work for Hoover, were not paid for by Hoover. They were paid for by me, personally, out my own personal bank accounts. It cost me money to work for the club. 2, I've handed in my notice and resignation 2 or 3 times. In fact, last week, 4 weeks ago, and 2 weeks ago, I've told Gareth, fire me, right? How can you fire somebody from an unpaid job? But okay, get rid of me, right? This is not fun. This is something I do for free, right? So I'm not desperate to do this job, but I cost no money, Lewis. And we are on track to hit the 5-year business plan, which is where where the club wants to be. So if somebody out there, which doesn't involve some lunatic throwing £350,000 a year, dead loss with absolutely no chance of recovering that money, right? If that's their business plan, I'm sorry, you're kidding yourself on. Now show me another plan that works. And if you can, I will happily step away. You can come in, do my job for free. You don't forget, and you have to put your own money in every year as well. Knock yourself out. I got no problem. But that's the reality. You honestly, you're living in cloud cuckoo land if you think that that it could have been avoided without some rich, high net worth individual wanting to spunk £350,000 a year.
That's might be where I'm living, Martin, but you've obviously explained to us earlier that nothing's been done by the club to seek that extra investment either. So it kind of works both ways.
It doesn't, Lewis. Tell me where they are. Listen, I live in Spain.
That's not my job, Martin. Martin, let me answer the question. And you've asked the question. Let me answer it, right? You guys are the custodians of the club, okay? You keep on saying that the club is for the fans.
Yep.
Oh, that's fine. The role of a fan is to go there on a Saturday and expect some kind of entertainment, a product that will please them, to come in at 2-3 o'clock, walk away relatively pleased. But you can't tell me, like you've explained earlier, that enough has been done to seek that extra investment. I appreciate the numbers you've said. I'm not disputing that, and I've said all along, 100% grateful for the money that's gone in to keep the club going. I'm not disputing that. But you've admitted earlier that nothing's been done potentially to external to go out to do that. Now, there's an assumption there, and I appreciate, again, it's a lot of money to throw away, but how don't you know unless you try?
Oh, come on, Lewis. How many people do you think, how much money do you think you have to have and own and earn to be able to lose £350,000, right? That's most people who are listening to these phone calls income in the next 5 to 10 years. Lose £350,000 per year, every year, with absolutely no chance of getting that money back. How much money do you think you have to have in your bank account?
Martin, I'm not disputing that fact. But what I've said to you is that unless anything goes out public from the club to ask for that extra investment, then we're just going to carry on as the way it is. And you've admitted it's not good enough, so we'll just carry on the way it is. So if we're just
to interject a little bit, just with this back and forth, I just want to share a comment from Dave Rowling saying Peterborough Sports made it known they needed extra investment to compete. Within a matter of time, a local guy approached the club and jumped on board. If they're, why not us? They've got fewer fans and worse facilities. And another kind of, I appreciate this is a football league example, but a club that I work with on a regular basis in Rochdale, only at the back end of January, put something out through their website stating themselves that they want people trying to come on board and to invest in Rochdale Football Club. It's more, I think the point that Lewis is trying to get to is, whilst I appreciate what you're saying in terms of, look, if you can say that we can break even, it's a more enticing prospect. Football doesn't work like that always. And ultimately, fans want to see something come out from the club to say, hey, come and get on board with Bradford Park Avenue. Nobody's expecting it to be a multi-billionaire that is just going to want to give away this money. But it's more just the fans, I think, want to see effort being, something put out there to say, look, come and join us, come and get on board with Avenue, come and invest in us, and we can go forward together.
But that's why we're doing this radio show, isn't it? And what do you want us to do? Put it on social media every week? I'm happy to do that kind of stuff. But then the investors, if they've got any kind of, if they're not a Bradford Park Avenue, kind of going, right, show me your sell document, show me your prospectus, as Lewis likes to call it. Okay, we're a £350,000 loss. And how much money, look, Rochdale's very different. It's a very different situation because they're a one club town. A little bit like Macclesfield, whose new owner rang us when he joined because they were going to put down a 3G pitch and said, how does that work from an economic point of view? But their crowds, there is something to build on. They haven't got a Bradford City in their town. You've got to look at all of those things. So you are looking for 10 people who are prepared to put in 35 grand a year, right? But it's still a huge amount of money. Right. Again, think about how many people. 10. I live in Spain, right? Kind of semi-retired. I don't know 10 people personally. Know 10 people who could afford to write off 35 grand a year, and I know a lot of very high net worth individuals, and I don't know 10 people who would write off 35 grand a year with absolutely no chance. And do you think that money, just to be clear, guys, comes with no strings attached? So that they don't want to play Football Manager for 35 grand a year, right? Or they don't want to play whatever it is that they think they're going to. What do they get out of it for their money? Those are the things that you've got to think about and sit down and be realistic. I understand. Look, I understand. Incredibly disappointing, and I'll make this clear, right? I'm happy to. This is my offer to resign today, right? I'll send it. I'll on the phone whilst I'm with you guys. I'm happy to resign. This is no fun for me, and it's massively frustrating that the club is in the situation it's in. But the reality is, 72-year-old owner wants the club to be self-sustaining. That's what I was asked to do. That's the business plan I put together. That's what I'm aiming to do. The reality is, what league should we be in, given our revenue? Not the league below, but the league below that. That's where we belong from a financial point of view, if we are self-sustaining. That's the reality, guys. And you don't want to, like I said to you, I'm going to be honest with you and I'll be frank, right? You'll get nothing ever less from me. You ask me any question, I'm going to tell you the truth. The situation is, I do not recruit the players. I don't select them. I don't scout them. That's not my job. I got the wrong job title. I run the finances and I decide who gets sold, and I get final say on all signings, and I negotiate all the contracts because that's what my skill set is. I know about as much about spotting a good football as Lewis does. I'm a fan, right? No more, no less. But I'm putting a business plan together because that's what I was asked to do, and I'm running the club in the way that to break even because that was what I was asked to do. And it's not fun. I'm not having any fun. I don't think this is hilarious. Spending 10 hours of my week negotiating contracts and putting the budget together, which is what I have to do, for free. And I understand it's your club and you want hope, but there's a reality. Sometimes there has to be a reality check. And I will speak to Callum. I'll get off. This is what my commitment to you. Callum, every single week from now on, we'll put a thing on the website and on our social media saying, if you're interested in investing in Bradford Park Avenue, please give us a call. If that's what you think visible looks like, in order for us to go and find somebody to invest. The reality of what's going to happen is they're going to contact us and we're going to say, yeah, here's our prospectus. We lose 350 grand a year. Do you want to invest? And by the way, you'll never get your money back.
Lewis?
Yeah, I mean, we're going round in circles, aren't we? But yeah, it's like I said, I get the figures and what you're quoting. I'm not disputing that, but there's a lot of frustration, as you well know, Martin, and it feels like at some points, at some times, that there's just to be honest, it feels for some people the towel's been thrown in, which is hard because we've seen people leave on deadline day for obviously I know the reasons you explained, and then we're asking, we're putting calls out for people, and it needs an action plan about it, doesn't it? To get, I've worked in comms for 10 years, and it needs a proper action plan of what that investment looks like and a bit of a plan. I get what you're saying about social media, but much as me, it needs more to do that. But yeah, I think it's going to be a very tough 18 months, isn't it?
Do we think the club needs help from the football aspect then? Obviously, I appreciate what you said in terms of, whilst you've got the title of Martin, the director of football, it's not necessarily the footballing side that you're part of, it's more the financial. Do we think perhaps in terms of, is there any endeavour to improve then, that scouting and that recruitment aspect? I know you mentioned earlier that there is a scout recently on board sort of thing. Do you think that's a route that will kind of help to find those potentially on the pitch, the talents that can come a little bit cheaper to push on?
I think if you look at the really successful clubs, so if you look at, okay, Notts County is a really bad example because in the league they get massive fan base, but they run Moneyball, right? You've seen the film. If you look at Forest Green, they run Moneyball, right? If you run at Southampton, they run Moneyball. So they have a statistical way of recruiting. So it's not about the problem with football from the business of football. It's all a bunch of ex-footballers going, oh, I know a good player when I see one. And I don't agree with that at all, right? Hockey doesn't work that way. Baseball doesn't work that way. Basketball doesn't work that way. There are some players that are effective. They might not necessarily be pretty to look at, but there are some players who are effective and some who are not. And it's about plus minus. And the clubs that recruit that way are the ones that manage to break even. They're the ones that manage to find the nuggets, which Lewis is talking about. And if I was, be perfectly honest, if I was involved with the club 5 years ago, whenever Gareth first bought it, I wouldn't have been putting 350,000 quid a year into the playing budget. I would have been spending 50 grand on building a algorithm and scouting so that I could go out and scout exactly what Lewis said, the lower leagues. So you can go and wait. How did we miss out on Aaron Martin, right? It was at Brighouse, which is 3 miles down the road, Lewis, from where we are. And Guiseley picked up on him. And Lewis, I remember you telling me about Aaron Martin, right?
Yeah.
Right. How did we miss him? That's what I look at and go, how's that happening? Who's scouting at that level? Because the football, the League One and League Two scouts are not going down that low, right? So if you're going to genuinely, this is my personal opinion, right? So this is nothing to do with Gareth or his strategy. If I won the lottery tomorrow and if I bought Bradford Park Avenue, I wouldn't be investing in the playing squad. I wouldn't be throwing 350 grand into the playing squad. I'd be chucking 100 grand at the scouting and building an algorithm so I could go out and scout lower down and find those nuggets because it works. Southampton have bought players off Forest Green. Brentford are another club that run Moneyball, right? So you had Forest Green, Brentford and Southampton who effectively were all feeding up. So they were doing the same thing. They were looking at players, not looking at them going, oh, yeah, so this is how we recruit right now, right? And this is no disrespect to Mark or Danny. We ring up the manager of the other club and go, you fancy him? What the hell does that mean? What business recruits in that way? You interview them, you do your due diligence, you go and watch them, you speak to them, right? Are we recruiting the right types of people? Are we recruiting the right types of player? We talked about that, in terms of was Jacob right for us? Lovely bloke, top bloke. And I negotiated his contract and I spoke to him on the last day of the season. I think there's nothing wrong with Jacob as a footballer. It just didn't suit our style of play, right? To Lewis's point, we weren't getting the ball out wide and getting the ball into him. That's no disrespect to him. It just didn't suit us. But we didn't do our job properly when we recruited him because we should have had that conversation when we recruited him. But we don't have that infrastructure. And that's where the money needs to be spent because there's this myth that it needs to be spent on wages and agents. And that's the other thing that Lewis, after that you guys haven't seen, that for the first 2 years I had this job, I didn't have a single agent asking me for money. Now that as soon as COVID was not gone, because obviously we're living with COVID now, but once that financial hit gone, this year it's been way more difficult to recruit players because the agents want money, even at our level. And that money goes straight out of the club. That's straight out of your pocket, Lou, straight into our turnstile and straight into the pocket of an agent who does what for the club.
Oh no, and I get that. Yeah, we know. I'm seeing examples of people in this division and below have got agents, and that's obviously their decision in it. For me, then, if we're saying that, looking at roles, responsibilities, and stuff, and we talk about the infrastructure is not great for scouting, and I think, again, going back, God rest him, but Colin did an unbelievable amount of work to scout a lot of players and suggest them. What from a football perspective on the pitch, because we know that it's probably going to be tough next year, even if we go down, which obviously we know might happen. What's the strategy? What's the plan to make sure that we are prepared to hit that Northern Premier League up and running then?
I think we're going to look at role responsibility. I think we're going to look at these are the conversations we're having, and I am going to be a little bit vague in some of these conversations because we have some employment law that I have to be respectful of. Right?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I get that.
Right? So we're going to look at roles and responsibilities. We're going to look at, therefore, look. Mark's not really a manager, right? Coach. No, we call him the manager, but he doesn't do any of the contract negotiations to manage the budget and all that kind of stuff. Coach. So we're going to look at roles. We're going to look at responsibilities. We're going to look at the way and type of player that we want to recruit in order. And this is where I hopefully can give you a little bit of hope, Lewis, because I want to put every penny on the pitch. And I think we can be slightly more efficient in the way we structure. I'm putting words carefully, and I said I'd be honest with you, and I will be as direct as I can. I think you've seen that, but there are some things I can't say. Some things we're going to look to reorganise in order that we can recruit the best possible team that we can, and that might change in some of our other organisation structure. That we want to play football in a particular style. So, can I ask you a question, Lewis? Can I ask you a question rather than you ask me a question? Right.
You can do if I can hear you breaking up, mate. But yeah,
right. So some of the stuff I read, and I don't read a lot of social media, and I don't go on the fans forum at all. But being a Newcastle fan, right? I hated watching Steve Bruce's teams, right? Hated them because we would go and put 10 men behind the ball and try and get a 0-0 or steal a 1-0. And my favourite time as a Newcastle fan isn't been under Eddie Howe. It's when we had Special K, right? Super Keegan in charge. And we were one of the best games of football I ever watched. We lost 4-3 at Anfield. Now Cauliflower scored the goal right at the end. So would you rather watch us play that kind of football and lose 4-3, and know that you were going to be entertained and know that you could lose, but you could win, but the game was going to be exciting end to end, or go and watch us be more like one of Jose Mourinho's team and be effective and grind out 1-0s?
So we actually had this prior to you joining. We had a similar scenario. I think probably when Gareth about first joined, there was a kind of a way that we were playing was very, tiki-taka football, as probably like to call it nowadays, instead of grinding it out. And I remember in days gone by when we went up to National League North under John Deasy, we played some unbelievable football, but we could grind it out as well. We were relatively balanced. In terms of answering your question, I want to see a winning team. For me, as a fan and as a club in a whole, for me, it's crazy it sounds, the vision is yet to survive as a football club, but for me it's actually you turn up to win a game on a Saturday. So in fairness, your vision of the club should be you want to be the best team in the world. You might never achieve it. We might never ever win a Champions League. We may never ever win the Premier League, but I want to go and see my team win. If that means we're having to grind out and be quite ugly to watch, would it be hard to watch? Yeah. But would I be pleased? Yeah, absolutely. Would I want to see us playing attacking football and lose 4-3 every week? Absolutely not. Because this is a situation that sometimes we're finding ourselves in that we are at the moment. So for me, I want to see a winning team. I know in the past other people who potentially don't actually come to Avenue anymore preferred watching us play that style of football in terms of tiki-taka football and be entertained. it's a balance. But for me, I want to win games, the top and bottom of it. I want Bradford Park Avenue, as crazy as it sounds, to be the top of the Football League pyramid. I know that's never ever going to happen. I know we're never going to beat the likes of Man City, but I want to go through that turnstile, 3:00, and want my team to win.
And believe they've got a chance of winning.
I want to be competitive, yeah. And I'll be honest, I think in the last, and I think this season, have we been competitive sometimes? Have we been non-competitive at times? Yeah, unfortunately we have. And I think we've got found out a little bit through a little bit of an experience. And yeah, being that we ain't got the strength and we ain't got the quality in the team to probably get us through the tough times. But for me, having gone and watched a lot of Northern Premier League football, like I said earlier, we need a lot of experience. And having 21, 22-year-olds in that team next year against some seasoned professionals is going to be an eye-opener. And I think, unfortunately, and I hate to say this because, like I say, the Academy are doing a great job and the time will come, some of them Academy lads will find it hard in that division. And unfortunately, because it's kind of woven in a little bit in that DNA on the pitch at the moment, if we're losing games, we don't start that season well, there's going to be even more discontent.
Okay, thanks.
Well, on that cheerful note from Lewis, Martin, thank you very much, though, for taking the time out of your evening to join us here on the West Yorkshire Football Show and to kind of share your views and opinions on the situation as it is. So we do really appreciate you taking the time to join us.
No, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Martin.
Cheers, guys.
Hey, Martin. See ya.
Bye.
So there we go. I imagine that's possibly going to leave more questions than answers to some extent for Avenue fans. But, you've got to give some credit to Martin for coming on and facing up the situation, I suppose. Lewis, I mean, yeah, it's a difficult one. It always is. And we've said this before for months on end since we restarted the podcast. In that, football at our level is always that balance between kind of entertainment and enthusiasm, whilst also kind of darkening what everybody knows that finances at this level of football is just a bit of a money pit and a black hole, really.
Listen, I don't agree with a lot what Martin says on that, and that's fair enough. We do have a mutual respect for each other, and I think that's absolutely fair. Spoken with him a lot since I've known him. Like I say, it doesn't mean I have to agree with everything. I think one eye opener for me is that, when you were talking about that commercial aspect in terms of that's his remit, and I know that was part of his remit, but unfortunately, again, I think because of a bit of a lack of communication, that's not been kind of put across well, because people think he's a director of football operations, because that's a job title. So people are seeing that football aspect of it, and I think Martin in his own right has been very successful in terms of business wise, and that's his remit, which from some people they probably want to see a person who's been experienced in football in the past to take that role on in terms of a football side of things. So listen, yeah, it's disheartening. It's nothing new that I've not heard before, and that's not a criticism, because I think there's a lot of out there. I still think there's a massive amount of work the club can do better at. Like I mentioned in that chat there, I think there's needs to be a lot more dialogue between the club and the fans. I think we really need to understand how disconnected people feel, I think, at the moment. And I don't think that's necessarily just on the pitch. I think that's off the pitch. There's a lot of work to be done. And like I said, it can be saved. It can be rectified. It's easy to rectify, but until something's done about it pretty quickly, my worries, in which I mentioned to him, is that we're just going to carry on doing what we're doing, and it isn't working at the moment. So, yeah, it's going to be a tough one, but fortunately, I think there is a group of fans who, have that ambition, that hope that sometime, the good times will come back. And, football is, it's a cycle, isn't it? Sometimes you go through the good times, you go through the bad times, you go back to the good times, and we've just got to stick through it. So, but yeah, I think there's a lot more that the club can do from an engagement perspective to keep people on the side while they're kind of riding that very high wave.
I guess I kind of hope that this, whilst obviously we've not had the time to necessarily answer every question and everything going, and all the questions that have probably come off the back of what's been said by Martin tonight, is that hopefully this can be, another starting point for Avenue fans to kind of have that conversation with those, Martin's level and board level.
It's got to happen for me, Chris. It's got to. And unfortunately, it's probably come to the point now where, because of the league position where we are, it's come to this, hasn't it? Really?
Yeah.
I think it's just unfortunately, things are not great from a lot of people's perspective. I agree with Martin. We don't have a magic wand, but we can do something about it. And I agree. There's probably not a lot of people that want to, kind of throw money down the drain, so to speak. We're having that money, but for me, we need to be selling that dream as a club. The good things that have happened. The academy is in a good place. We are bringing more kids into the club. We are doing a lot more into the community. Don't get me wrong, numbers do tell a massive story. I'm not disputing that, but for me, we need to be talking about the good things about the club. And what we're capable of doing and what that future is. If we're talking about being better in the next 12, 18 months, it's having that roadmap and that strategy of what the club's want to do. Like I say, for me, the vision is you want to be the best club in the world. It's probably never going to happen, but that's your vision.
You want that ambition, don't you? You want that hope and excitement.
And I think from a fan's perspective, we want to understand the strategy and what's happening behind the scenes, within reason, obviously, to how we're going to go about that. So, it'll be interesting. Hopefully, things might change.
There's a football match on Saturday as well.
Is there? We've only been talking an hour and 20 minutes, and we're not...
We've not even got to the actual football. I mean, I've just looked, 7 games to go. Obviously, 9 points adrift. Curzon Ashton away on Saturday, Lewis. Brad Doherty might be injured. How do you see this one going?
Yeah. Might have my boots. Might get my boots ready. I've got some old shin pads.
You started at this rate.
Yeah, the best thing is that we've not even won at Curzon since 2017, so that bodes really well, doesn't it?
But it was Curzon Ashton that you got your first win of the season. So
of course.
Famous prediction.
Oh, the good old days how they seem to have flown by. It's going to be tough. And this is a point I made early in that chat. We don't have a lot of experience in that team. We've probably got 4 or 5 players who have that bit of experience. Thinking about it, we've got Luca, we've got Simon Richmond, Mitch Lund, Ollie Johnson, and we're struggling now to probably find an experienced player. You look at Curzon, they're blessed with a lot of experienced players, and that's how they've got out of the trouble they were in, because we were very close and actually at one point above them in the league table. But they've got that experience, that know how to get out of the situation. So, and actually probably now they're looking up the table and similar to what Buxton are doing, they're looking to possibly nick that last playoff spot. It's going to be tough. We don't have that strength in depth. Lloyd is coming back up from what Martin said, obviously from Frickley. He's had a really good run at Frickley. It is a completely different level, but listen, we've got nothing to lose, have we? With 9 points adrift, people expecting to get relegated. We're expecting to get relegated. For me, it's now actually planning for next season. And that was my question to Martin, is actually, as harsh as it sounds, you're probably right off this season now. You're saying, right, let's get ready and hit that ground running for that first game next season. Yeah,
I mean, we'll fingers crossed that. You never know. I mean, football's a funny game. You never know. But
what are you predicting, Chris?
I'll go for it. Haven't you win then?
Imagine if it's like the spell is lifted. The curse is
given
lifted.
All the darkness that there seems to be hanging over things at the moment, I'll go for it, because you never know. Look, it might just be one of those miracle ones where it goes in off the backside of Luca or something, and you get a 1-0 win. And frankly, at this stage, you would take it no matter what the performance and the way the goal comes.
Absolutely.
Can I just say a shout out to our Huddersfield Town correspondent, Steve Downs, who, bless him, he thought we were going live at 7:30, and I just bobbed him a message saying, sorry, mate, we've just got a heated debate going on over here. But he's been watching, so thank you for holding on, Steve. I hope you enjoyed the debate.
Yes, Stephen, sorry to keep you waiting, mate. Go and have some tea. Go and have some tea or something. You're happy he's got Neil Warnock. He's happy, isn't he? So he's all right.
Hey, he's happy. He'll be happy because, this is a little bit awkward after that conversation, but Huddersfield have got new owners.
I was just going to say, ironic. Anyway, shall we swiftly move on past that bit? Yeah.
Yeah. We will just touch briefly on the other sides then across our region, of course, the Northern Premier League sides for Guiseley and Liversidge. Liversidge, they've been picking up some results of late. You know, when you start to look at their form over the last 10 games, there are a lot more wins and draws than losses, which compared to where they were 3 months ago is remarkable, to be honest.
21st, 4 points adrift of getting out of trouble now. 2 games in hand. They've given themselves a chance, haven't they? Recruited a couple of players recently. Rob Guilfoyle, know Rob quite well from his early days this season at Avenue. He's a important threat up front, in front of goal. And like I say, yeah, picked up a point at Mask. Crucial point away from home. Yes, they did lose against Warrington, but then midweek, like you say, they go to Atherton Collieries, win 4-0. I know they got down to 10 men, but that's not only a result, but goal difference as well. Gives them a massive boost.
Former Guiseley Academy lad Ollie Brown as well was the man that got sent off for Atherton Collieries, who's on loan from Alfreton as well. For them this weekend, it is Matlock at home. Obviously, Matlock aside that are in, continuously in and around that playoff mix and have been for the last couple of years.
We've got 3 home games coming up in a row, and for me, this makes a breakfast season now for Sedge. You know, Matlock at home. Matlock have probably slipped away a tiny bit in recent months from where they were. Lancaster, a massive game against a team who were flying at the moment, and then Radcliffe as well, who were, you know, a very good team who were pushing for promotion. So very tough fixtures, but 3 home games. They've got to, you know, if they want to get out of trouble, let's be honest, they're going to have to pick up probably 6 points out of them 9. But when you've got a bit of momentum, it's all about doing it at the right time, isn't it, and peaking. So fingers crossed that we do get some results out of that, because you know, that could potentially be interesting. You look at next season and what that might look like. You might have Farsley, Avenue, Guiseley, Liversidge. You know, you could almost do a podcast in itself, couldn't you, for that league?
Yeah, you genuinely could. Quick word on that. I was just going to say, obviously, Liversidge are also in County Cup semi-final action, I think, tonight.
Yeah.
Against Barnoldswick Town as well. So I know, obviously, Barnoldswick are a side there. Close kind of where I grew up as well. So the best of luck to both of those sides in that one. For Guiseley, disappointing defeat on Saturday against Belper, especially the fact that it was at home on non-league day as well. Good crowd turned out at Nethermore, but not the result that Paul Phillips would have wanted.
I think it's probably another team looking to next season, aren't they, planning ahead.
I mean, there was 4 in on deadline day. Don't mean to rub it in. There was 4 players in at Guiseley on deadline day.
just to put it out there. Yeah, you know what? And I think the disappointing thing for Guiseley's perspective is that they gave themselves a chance at, 2 months ago to get potentially a shot in the playoffs. And then they've just kind of fallen away probably at the most important time. And, I think the 10th at the moment, 10 points adrift of the playoffs. There's not much to go in this season. I think if you're Phillips and the rest of the team, you've probably got more than one eye on next season.
Aren't you?
You are. I think it's going to be difficult to kind of break that top 7 or 8 now. And unfortunately, that defeat against Belper, who were, have been struggling. And I saw the chances Guiseley have not scored by hitting a woodwork, and how Guiseley have not scored on that, I have no idea. But from that perspective, sometimes you don't always get what you deserve, is it? So from Guiseley's perspective, they've got, like I say, Ashton away, Stalybridge at home, Atherton are all Northwest teams coming up. Paul Phillips will probably know them very well from his days.
I was going to say, of course, going back to a former club, isn't he? Ashton United on Saturday in particular, and actually Stalybridge not long after.
Yeah, so he'll probably know their work reasonably well as well. I'm sure they'll be doing their homework, but I think Guiseley will be planning for next season, especially, like I say, if we're going to be in competition with a few other teams in around the local area, they want to probably get a bit of a head start on recruitment.
Steve's had his tea, by the way. He's already eaten.
I hope he really enjoyed it. I bet he had a bowl of popcorn, didn't he, for that?
Yeah. And finally, of course, not forgetting pop back up to National League North with Farsley, who are, point outside of the bottom 4 at the moment, with a game in hand as well on those below and above.
You know what? Farsley's still giving themselves a chance out there. Buxton, the defeat there, was probably a tough one, but the way Buxton are flying at the moment, it was probably half expected. Darlington won a massive win on that Tuesday night. Bullied Darlington in that first half. they looked a decent team, did Farsley, to be fair. And then, like I say, they get that last-minute draw against Peterborough, another goal of the season contender from Mulhern, who just seems to score them contenders every other week. And I think that's the difference at the moment between the likes of ourselves at Avenue and Farsley, where Farsley are grinding out results and getting a draw in the last minute potentially. And then, they've got some big games coming up. Kidderminster at home. Kidderminster have not been the same team as what they've been in recent years. Probably for me, one of the most disappointing teams in the season so far. Brackley on a Tuesday night at home. It's a game that can get something out of, and then Burston away. So again, these are the real important games for the likes of Farsley now, and I still think they've got quality to get out of it. I think when you look at it, you can probably count Telford and Avenue down. I think, you've now got a battle between Leamington, Farsley. Blythe have given himself a chance with an unbelievable win at Files.
Yeah, who the hell saw that coming?
Not me. Ketter in a kind of, in a decent position. Boston are putting a run together. So when I said earlier, maybe a few weeks ago, there's probably 8 teams battling it out now. I'd say it's been narrowed down to probably about 4 or 5 to really stay out of that trouble. And Farsley, for me, going forward, they've definitely got the people to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you mentioned Kidderminster then, because I always think back to that 13-14 season where I was commentating on Avenue and we had 2 great ties in both the FA Cup and the trophy against Kidderminster, and both games as well went to replays and went the distance, and that was at a time when Kidderminster were pushing to get back into the Football League as well. How times changed for them.
Yeah, and that's it's bizarre because Kidderminster have always been a very good non-league team, haven't they? Either in a league above or this league, you can always count on Kidderminster to, going back to the conversation we had earlier, they're a team who do play very attractive football, have got the ball down, and, they like to play football, they like to entertain the fans, and you always know what you're going to get from Kidderminster. But at the moment, for them to be in that position where they are, like I say, looking at the league table, for Kidderminster to be 14th, for me, you'd have predicted Kidderminster to be in the playoffs. But 51 points from 40 is probably not really good enough for a team of that quality. So, and also bear in mind that they went on a great FA Cup run. So, that extra money budget, potentially is not really worked out for them at the moment. So, they're going to they'll come good at some point, I think, Kidderminster, but Farsley have got a real opportunity there at home, I feel. And like I say, when you look at Kidderminster, they've not won in the last 5-6 games, 5 draws, 1 loss. That's not a typical Kidderminster team, so Farsley might just catch them at the right time.
Absolutely. And that, I think, will bring us to a close.
I'd love to say that. Can I just say as well, and it's absolutely great, and I don't want to waste any more time. I've been asked by one of the fans at Avenue, don't worry, it's not bad. There is an evening tomorrow at Avenue Social Club. There's a few tickets remaining. Steve Curran's a guest speaker. The details on our website. But always a good evening, run by the Supporters Club. So if anybody's interested, check out the website. The details are on there. But a speaker's evening, there's still some tickets available. And I promise that is me done. Steve can come online, stop having his tea and his pudding.
Actually, final thing before we let you go, Lewis, just wanted to touch on, I don't know whether you know for definite here, but Campion, are they up yet? I know in the league above, Ferriby are officially promoted. I know Worksop Town as well have been promoted from the Counties East League, but it's not quite there yet for Campion, but looking likely. 8 points clear with 8-9 points. Yeah,
they can secure it in the next 2 games. Ferriby won it at Fackley. Really good achievement. A club who have been in some bad times, haven't they? And they're now back on the up. But yeah, Campion 8 points ahead, 4 games to go. The last game, ironically, is against Harrogate Railway. It got postponed at half time due to snow a few weeks ago. Harrogate at the moment, I think, a second or third with Rossington Main. So they'd probably find it sweet to win the title at that game, but I think they'll probably just do it before. So after a little bit of a blip in mid-season, I think Campion have just got enough in the bag now to see it through, and they'll give it a real good go in that league above. And talk about that as a podcast. In that next league, in the NCL Prem, you could have Albion Sports, you could have Eccleshill, you could have Campion, Fackley, Silsden, Emley, Garforth. So if you want a sub podcast, guys, I'm in.
Yeah, we're gonna have to start branching out into. I mean, we've been weighing up non-league specials as already, hadn't we? But we're gonna have to drop into proper niche, like lower level territory. And I bet there is an audience for it. I bet there is.
We'll find
Lewis, thanks very much for your time this evening. Obviously, a big thank you as well to Martin Knight for joining us, the Director of Football, only in title, at Bradford Park Avenue. If you have liked the video, give us a like and a subscription on the YouTube channel. Give us a like and follow on Twitter and Facebook as well. That would be greatly appreciated. We are going to basically come out of this and then start a new stream to talk all things Huddersfield Town with Stephen Downes. So if you're an Avenue fan that also has an affiliation in Huddersfield, get yourself back for that as well. Big thank you, though, to Lewis for joining us tonight. Thanks a lot, mate.
No, cheers, guys. Really appreciate it. Really good conversations.
Thank you, Lewis. Cheers, mate.